My name is Laila Rahimi, and the day I turned 16, my parents told me I was going to be married. Not in some distant, abstract way. It was immediate. A man I had met only once at a family gathering, a friend of my uncle's, 10 years older than me, was going to be my husband. My mother smiled while saying it, as if she were giving me a gift. My father didn't even look up from his tea. I sat frozen, my heart racing, while the room spun around me. I was a junior in high school. I had a math test the next day. I hadn't even had my first kiss. I wanted to scream, but I didn't. I knew better. In our household, obedience was survival. Silence was safety. Disobedience meant punishment, and I'd learned that lesson early, sometimes with bruises, sometimes with locked doors and meals withheld. The worst punishment, though, was emotional, the cold absence of love. My parents could make you feel like you didn't exist. But that night, something inside me cracked. I couldn't accept this future. Not anymore. The next morning, I confided in my English teacher, Ms. Rodriguez. I hadn't planned to, but when she asked why I seemed distracted, the truth just fell out. She didn't react with pity. She didn't lecture me about cultural values. She listened. And then she took action. Within hours, Child Protective Services was contacted. That's how I met Margaret, a social worker with sharp eyes and a calm voice. She believed me, too. She spoke softly but with authority, like someone used to stepping into dangerous situations. Margaret worked fast. A temporary protective order was filed. I was removed from my home under emergency grounds and placed with a foster family in another county. My parents were furious, of course. They claimed cultural misunderstanding, said I was rebellious, Americanized, brainwashed. But legally, they had no right to force a marriage on a minor. Still, the threats didn't stop. My extended family began calling from across the country. I was accused of shaming them, of bringing dishonor. My mother sobbed in voicemails. My father left cold warnings. You think this is over? You'll come home. One way or another. Theodora was the one who taught me how to prepare for that. She was a retired police officer now working with a nonprofit that helped girls in my situation. She was my protector, my shadow. She taught me how to recognize stalking, how to use code words, how to check under my car for trackers. I learned to never walk the same route twice. For months, we fought in court. Their lawyer painted me as a troubled girl, unstable, manipulated. Patricia, my attorney, was relentless. She brought an expert testimony. She introduced school records, text messages, and even secretly recorded conversations. I remember the moment the judge granted the permanent protective order. My mother gasped. My father stood up as if to protest, but sat down just as fast when two bailiffs took a step forward. But the real war wasn't in the courtroom. It was in the silence that followed. My family cut me off entirely. No phone calls. No birthday messages. I was dead to them. But in that silence, something unexpected happened. Girls began reaching out. Quietly. Carefully. It started with one in my school. Then 3. Then 5. I created a system, a hidden notebook, disguised as a school planner, filled with resources, phone numbers, rights under the law, warning signs, exit plans. I stashed them in library stacks, bathroom stalls, under desks. Some got taken. Some vanished. But every time one disappeared, I hoped it was saving someone. Fatima was the first to reach out directly. She was 19, married off at 16, already bearing scars. She'd found one of my notebooks. We met in secret. She cried the first time we hugged. She said, "You were the first proof I had that someone like me could survive." Then came the night my foster home was broken into. I wasn't there, thank God, but the message was clear. My parents hadn't given up. Theodora said it was time to disappear entirely. We moved again. I changed schools. My legal documents were sealed. But I didn't stop. Every week, I mailed out more notebooks. I built a distribution web, code names, drop points, burner phones. Ms. Rodriguez became my anchor, coordinating from inside the school system. Margaret and Theodora kept me protected. Patricia quietly coached other girls' lawyers. Then came the community event where my parents showed up unexpectedly. I'd gone to speak anonymously, just a shadowy figure sharing her story. But someone recognized my voice. Word spread. That's when the intimidation escalated. Threats were left in my locker. Photos of me from across the street. A dead bird on my foster family's porch. We filed police reports, but with no direct evidence, nothing stuck. So we adapted. I stopped sleeping in the same place twice. Theodora trained a network of off-duty officers who rotated shifts watching over me. Panic buttons were installed in every room I entered. I hated living in fear. But I knew what the alternative was. Then came the breakthrough. A major online article covered my story, anonymously still, but with enough detail to inspire. It went viral overnight. Women who'd escaped similar situations wrote in droves. Organizations offered support. Shelter directors called. Lawyers volunteered. The Freedom Network was born. On Friday, I received a message from an unknown number. 12 girls in 3 states now have the notebooks. They're making copies. You did it. That weekend was quiet. I felt the storm gathering again. And sure enough, on Monday, it hit, not with violence, but with erasure. My family published a formal letter in the community newsletter. I had been disowned. Not just by my parents, but by every aunt, uncle, cousin. My name was to be removed from all family trees. Photos burned. Anyone who dared contact me would be cut off too. In their world, that was worse than death. But as I read it, I felt relief. They'd played their final card. And I was still here. Tuesday brought a flood of new calls. Girls who'd been watching, waiting, saw that even their worst fears didn't destroy me. That day alone, 3 emergency orders were filed. 2 girls made it to shelters. 1 was intercepted but had told a teacher enough to spark a state investigation. On Wednesday, we held a meeting with the leaders who'd reached out. Social workers, attorneys, survivors. We mapped out the Freedom Network, legal aid teams, discreet shelters, trauma therapists. The name came from one of the women, hidden in plain sight, like your notebooks. Thursday was the renewal hearing for my permanent protective order. When I walked into the courtroom, it was packed. But not with my family. With girls I'd never met, carrying copies of the notebooks. With teachers. With counselors. With social workers. My father's lawyer made a last-ditch argument that disowning me proved the family no longer posed a threat. The judge shut him down. Disownment, she said, does not erase the threat of past abuse or the potential for future harm. When we walked out, Fatima was waiting. She'd driven 3 hours to be there. We didn't speak. We just hugged while photographers captured the moment. 2 girls who refused to disappear. On Friday, the Freedom Network held its first official meeting. 15 volunteers. Ms. Rodriguez. Theodora. 2 former foster mothers. We mapped out packet distribution, training sessions, safe house logistics. It felt real now. Not just survival. Resistance. That night, I got another call. Another unknown number. Another scared voice. I found your notebook, she whispered. Can you help me? Yes, I said, grabbing my pen. Tell me everything. And as she spoke, I realized something powerful. My family had tried to erase me. But I'd become something they couldn't erase. I was a whisper passed through hallways. A name written in hidden pages. A secret that saved lives. And for every girl who learned her rights, we'd already won.